Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. Ow! I don't do the touching. Hello, welcome back to Big Mouth. A very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the dceu Daily. And don't forget, if you want to continue this or any other conversation I ignite, you can go over on my Twitter. It's not a long way. You don't have to walk. You don't need a cab. Just at me, at Movies TV Mad on my Vero at Big Mouth 1. And the extension of this channel is my Instagram, Big Mouth. Go and check me out. I promise I'll even make you laugh. So a very, very warm welcome, everyone. And of course, we're talking about Release the Snyder Cut. And yet again, Screen Rant, one of the biggest, probably the only members of Access Media to officially support Release the Snyder Cut. There's some stuff they put on their site that I have to make fun of, but their support for Release the Snyder Cut has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been fantastic. And this, my friends, this title, this kind of says everything to me. Justice League. Snyder Cut has better CGI than the theatrical. Now, I'm going to read this out, or you know what a struggle is me reading stuff, but I'll try. A little bit dyslexic, I'm afraid, but we're going to do this. Then I'm going to react to this. Justice League Snyder Cut has better looking CGI than the version released in theatres. Much has been made about the Snyder's Cut status in terms of VFX completion. Yet when comparing the two cuts, it's clear Zack Snyder's version is visually far superior. It's been well chronicled that the VFX of Justice League is not 100% done, but some of it is complete or close to complete. And a number of screenshots of the film released by Zack Snyder on the social media platform Vero outshine the garish and unpolished visuals of Joss Whedon's theatrical cut. When diving deep and comparing the reshot versions of the same scenes, it is clear that the Snyder Cut has a higher VFX quality than what audiences got in the final film. I'm going to react, don't worry. The truly shining spot to prove how far along the Snyder Cut got along before Zack left the project is the new images of Aquaman, Mera and Voco. In March of 2017, Zack Snyder tweeted a video of him actively working on the Atlantean scenes of Justice League. I remember that. During his birthday, clearly a lot of this scene was completed, as the short video Zack tweeted was labelled Review for Final with a date of February 2017. Listed in the beginning, the scene had Aquaman returning to an Atlantean outpost with VFX much further along than most realised. Some of the most recent images Snyder posted on Vero prove they got even further along than that. The four images focused on a meeting between Voco and Arthur, a plea to get Arthur in the battle to save Earth, and to give him the armour he wears throughout the film. While the shots are in black and white, the first thing noticed is how complete each shot looks. Water effects, backgrounds, textures and lighting all look polished as fans get a true feel for what Snyder's vision was for these scenes. Comparing the Snyder Cut scenes to their theatrical counterparts makes the cutting of the original shots even more confusing. The reshoots removed Voco from the film, significantly cut the screen time of Mera and reduced the Atlantean battle sequences. Joss Whedon reshot dialogue between Arthur and Mera, with Mera taking Voco's role in the film to frantically reduce runtime and add humour to the story. When looking at the VFX of this sequence, everything from lighting to VFX looks significantly worse, the quality giving off more of a network television film than a cinematic one. Hang on, I want to say something on this. Not even a network television movie would air something that's such subpar standard. Even more confounding than the cut story is the time and money invested in fully completing VFX for a scene that was removed from the theatrical cut. Given the underwater nature of the scene and the heavy VFX required, this could account for millions of wasted dollars. The CGI in the theatrical cut of Justice League has visual problems far beyond just the Atlantean sequences, though a quick look at any sequence with mustache-gate Superman makes it apparent the studio had their hands off the steering wheel in the final stages of the reshoots. All reshot sequences felt rushed as they flew in the cast to shoot nearly 80 pages of new script, only a few months before release, leaving most of the original film, including lots of compo or nearly completed VFX, on the cutting room floor. After Zack Snyder handled in his version, lighting, colour grading all clearly look altered from their intended version, and some shots, such as the parademons attacking Steppenwolf in the reshot ending, were so rushed they didn't even get fully textured. What suffered the most with the final product? With a balloon budget, Justice League came off looking like a much older, much cheaper film than what it was expected from today's superhero blockbusters. When comparing the theatrical cut to the images that Snyder has teased on Vero and the original trailers of the film, the difference is palpable and striking. No wonder Snyder is telling his fans not to lose hope. And we haven't, Zach, don't worry. Regardless of how much VFX needs to be polished in the Snyder Cut, one thing is clear: the CGI that was done and completed by Zack Snyder was far superior to the theatrical cut of Justice League. It may cost millions to finish the cut, but with the economics and high content demand of the streaming wars, HBO Max makes the cost more than worthwhile. Regardless, when the Snyder Cut eventually sees the light of day, audiences will surely wonder as to why the theatrical cut was released in its condition in the first place. Brilliant article. Let's give someone a shout out who did this. This is Shiraz Faraki. Now, I think Shiraz, sorry if I butchered your name. Again, I've read your articles before. Is definitely a Release the Snyder Cut fan. He's part of the movement. He's part of the Snyder family. Mwah! That was brilliant. I really enjoyed reading that. And he asks a really, really good question that I've been saying forever. How can a studio, a legendary, iconic studio, not just studio, but business, release something with such subpar quality? That is the question. And what's even worse here? They have another version, a far superior version, the original director's proper vision, and they are refusing, as far as we know, they are refusing to release it. Now, I've been watching TV and film since I was 10 years old. I used to do little soap dramas on the old audio cassettes, right? I've been to drama school. I've been to film school. I've been to amateur dramatics. I used to go once a week, and I used to help people out there as well. So I was actually working with some people who actually extraed on EastEnders as well when I went to this amateur dramatic society. I have spoken to people from the industry. I work with people who work in this industry as well. And nobody that I discuss about this situation understands how this ever freaking well happened. This is Warner Brothers. This has never happened in the history of movie making with such a subpar, embarrassing, cringing level of quality in a film to be released. They actually thought you, the movie consumer, were going to be dumb enough not to notice this. Look, not to notice this. Not to notice poor Henry. Look what they've done to Henry. Look what they've done to him. It is outrageous, Warner Brothers. Outrageous. I'm spitting on my screen. I apologise. First of all, what they did to that fabulous actor, that fabulous young man, was disgusting. They butchered his face. Right? They released a subpar piece of content, and they weren't embarrassed because they thought you and me were going to be dumb enough not to notice that picture I've just shown you, not to notice the terrible CGI. They actually believed that. Now, I didn't actually notice how bad Henry looked when I saw it in the cinema. I didn't, I'll be honest. It was only when you guys started showing me stuff and telling me stuff, and I didn't even believe you at first, right? It's only later on when I realised everything you guys were screaming about was actually true. And then I was late to the party, I admit it. Always the first to defend Warner Brothers and DC because I'm a fan, for crying out loud. I never believed they would do this, and they did. Right? The reason I didn't like the theatrical version when I first saw it, because everything just seemed so simple and quick. And by the time I finished watching it, I was heartbroken. And I've spoken about this before. But how can a studio, a company, any company, a massive company, release something so subpar? It's embarrassing. This is, as I say, this has never happened in the history of movie making. Never, never. Even when we've seen director's cuts, right? Even when people haven't been happy with movies. Nobody from the major studios, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Sony, MGM, any of them, none of the others would have ever released something so subpar. They would have either delayed the movie or cancelled the movie. But most of them would have delayed the movie. They would have sacked. They still would have sacked Zack because they were concerned. They had a big, they had a multi-billion-dollar franchise on their hands. They would have said, right, we don't believe it's working. Sorry, Zack, here's your cards. Thank you very much. Good luck for the future. They would have brought in Joss Whedon. We want you, Joss, to go back to the drawing board, not just to reshoot the film, to write your own film. We don't care how long it takes. Right, fans, there will be no Justice League on November, whenever it was, right? The next film, you'll have to wait for a whole nother year, which is Aquaman, right? We want Joss Whedon to make the film that he wants, right? And we're going to give him the time that he can do so we can reset. Be honest with us. Be honest with us. That we want to reset this. We respect Zack Snyder, but unfortunately we didn't agree with the direction he was going. So we've brought in Joss Whedon to reset this franchise. And when he's ready and he's taken his time and he's completed this Justice League movie, then you will see. That's what should have happened if Warner Brothers, as a studio, wasn't happy with Zack. Me and you would have been upset. We still would have been arguing, release the Snyder Cut, right? But you know what? We still would have got a pretty awesome Justice League if they allowed Joss to do his job properly and start from scratch. This is not Joss Whedon's fault. Joss Whedon was wrong to take his 30 pieces of silver and do what they asked him to do because he couldn't do it. The man couldn't do it. It's not his fault it was so bad. But what he did do was trample on the grave of another creative, and that's wrong. That kind of happens all the time. It's dog eat dog in Hollywood, in big business. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? And unfortunately, this is what happens. So everything they did was so wrong, but you've got this subpar kind of content. You as a studio have seen it. You forced this poor man, to rush and reshoot this, rewrite this. It's a mess. But you as a studio this is what's so funny about this whole thing. You as a studio would rather that subpar piece of shit be released than Zack Snyder's complete vision, just because the colour palettes were a little darker, just because it was a little bit brutal, compelling and violent, right? The film still would have had laughs in it. This is the whole thing. Chris Terrio told us there are lighter moments in that Justice League. Even before they sacked Zack. Sacked Zack, right? I'm too, Anyway, right? So it is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. A studio would rather release what they did than Zack Snyder's superior film. Imagine that. But what's worse? What's worse? They're willing to be proud of that piece of shit rather than releasing the superior version, which is about 3.5 hours long, right? From what we're told. We don't know that, right? But that's what we're told. And I'm willing to accept that. So they're willing to say, this is our Justice League. We will never release the Snyder Cut. This is crazy thinking. And as long as Warner Brothers refuse to release the Snyder Cut and stand by something so subpar, something so rushed, something so below par and below the quality that any film should be before it's released. I don't trust you, Warner Brothers. I can't trust you with my DC characters because they are our DC characters. I spent loads of money this year on Flash year one, on Superman year one. I loved them. How long could I keep on spending money on your product when you're saying to me you are willing to release and force a creative to rush out something subpar, instead of the superior version that you've got locked in your vaults? It does not make sense to me. This has gone beyond a bunch of stands screaming out. This is about you, Warner Brothers, and how you want to be seen in the future. You are on the wrong side of history right now. The wrong side of history. You are standing by something that's wrong. This is not about toxicity. This is not about toxic fandom. This is about you. You had a creative there, right? Nobody asked you to allow Christopher Nolan to bring Zack on. You wanted Chris to mould this franchise. He didn't want to do it. He brought someone on. You agreed to his choice of Zack Snyder because you wanted Chris to godfather this whole thing, right? You were clearly never comfortable with Zack on board. So you should have put your foot down from that moment and said, sorry, Chris, we're going to bring someone who actually wants to mould this themselves and someone that we can rely on. So sorry, we won't be bringing Zack on. I love Zack, but the point is, as a company, you've got to make straight arrow decisions. So it wasn't Zack Snyder's fault that you went along with what Chris Nolan wanted. So you made crazy decisions, but ultimately, Warner Brothers, this is your reputation that's on the line. I have followed you. I have supported your films. I've respected you. How old am I now? 47 years old. And it's unbelievable. This is why I didn't believe all this stuff coming out from the fans at first. But you know what's worse, Warner Brothers? This is so true. I defended Toby Emmerich when they didn't sack him and they sacked the others. I thought, well, maybe he's all right. But clearly it's Toby Emmerich who did this via Variety last week. He's behind it because in a desperate attempt not to get the Superior Cut released. So if he is behind it and he doesn't want a Superior Cut released and he's happy to stand by that piece of shit that was released, right, from nobody's fault but the studio's, right, he has to be removed from Warner Brothers. Simple. I don't know if this is true, but if he wants to stand by this, and Anne Sarnoff, I say to you, and you'll never see this video, but I speak to you directly. You look like a very intelligent woman. I've researched you. You have done wonders in this industry. Don't tell me you're going to stand by that subpar content because you're in charge now. This says something about you. What kind of Warner Brothers do you want to run? One that stands by a subpar film that not even an amateur filmmaker would even make, would even release for his friends to see or her friends to see, right? No one would release such subpar. It's an embarrassment. But by releasing the Snyder Cut, everyone's going to forget what Warner Brothers did with the theatrical version. You release it to a mass audience. Then you put it on HBO Max. And finally, you release it for home release. Everyone's going to forget. And you can still carry on with your amazing plans for the future of the DC Cinematic Universe. Todd Phillips' Black Label, which I support, by the way. But don't do this. This goes beyond Zack Snyder and what the studio did to him, which was disgusting. We won't go over that again, right? This goes beyond that. This is about you. You as a studio. How do you want to be seen? A bunch of amateur hacks who don't know what they're doing. Because that's what people say. It's not just DC fans. Everyone are making fun of you, Anne, because you won't release this cut. This is a big moment. Do you realise, Anne, that more people are talking about the Snyder Cut? The Snyder Cut is trending more than Wonder Woman 1984, than Black Adam. Think about that, Anne. What does that say about Zack and his vision? You have to think very, very carefully here. And if that Variety article is true, then I'm losing my voice here, sorry. But if that Variety article is true, you have to have a rethink, Anne. Because I'm not a studio person, but even I know a guy who's been watching films since he was a little boy and has a passion for creating things. Even I know that this is dumb and you have to have a rethink. You really, really do. And if you don't have a rethink, you are going to carry on being called a bunch of hacks. You're embarrassing yourselves by not releasing this cut. Releasing this cut doesn't admit culpability. Releasing this cut says you are a studio who admits that maybe that you made a wrong turn and you are trying to put it right. Nothing you ever decide in your life, Anne, will ever be more important. It's up to you.